Rowan Ashford straightened his tie for the third time, caught his reflection in the polished surface of the transport shuttle, and immediately regretted every decision that led to this moment. He was a cultural anthropologist, perfectly comfortable in archives and research labs. Diplomatic receptions where one wrong word could trigger an interstellar incident were decidedly not his forte. But Earth's delegation to the Galactic Integration Summit was desperately short on people who'd actually studied alien customs. So here he was, wearing formal attire that felt like a costume and carrying the weight of representing his entire species. His assigned companion for the evening was Thessaly, a Kael'thir cultural liaison he'd worked with for months on translation protocols. She was brilliant, patient with his endless questions, and had those striking curved ears that he'd learned to read like a mood indicator. Forward meant interest, back meant caution, flattened meant distress. Tonight they swept back in relaxed curves, which he hoped meant she wasn't as nervous as he was. "You'll do fine," she said as they approached the grand hall where a dozen species mingled under bioluminescent decorations that pulsed like living stars. "Just remember, Valorians consider prolonged eye contact aggressive. Centauri require you to acknowledge their house affiliation before discussing business, and never ask a Thulian about their appendages." Rowan nodded, his mind already overloading with protocols. The evening passed in a blur of careful greetings and cautious conversations. Twice he nearly made mistakes that Thessaly smoothly intercepted, steering him away from cultural landmines with subtle touches to his elbow. When a Valorian dignitary began what was clearly a pointed political probe, Thessaly redirected the conversation so deftly that Rowan didn't even realize what she'd done until after. As they stepped away, Rowan felt a surge of genuine gratitude and admiration. He turned to her and said, "You're incredible. I don't know what I'd do without you. You make me better than I am alone." Thessaly went completely still. Her skin, usually a soft opalescent shimmer, flushed through three colors in rapid succession: pale blue surprise, golden wonder, then dark copper that looked like panic. Her ears flattened against her head. "We need to leave," she said, her voice tight. "Now." Before Rowan could ask what was wrong, she had his wrist in a grip surprisingly strong and was steering him through the crowd toward the exit with none of her usual grace. Thessaly brought him to her secured diplomatic quarters and locked the door behind them with shaking hands. Rowan, confused and worried he'd somehow offended her, started to apologize, but she held up a hand to stop him. "What you said to me, you make me better than I am alone. Do you understand what those words mean in Kael'thir culture?" Rowan searched through months of cultural study and came up empty. Thessaly took a breath that looked painful. "In our language, that exact phrase structure is the oath of completion. It's not a compliment or a romantic confession. It's a declaration of recognized bond, a statement that another person completes you. By Kael'thir law and custom, once spoken sincerely in the presence of the intended, the bond is established. Legally binding, irreversible except through formal rejection before the council." Rowan felt the floor tilt beneath him. "But I didn't know I was just being grateful. I meant it as a compliment." "I know," Thessaly said, and tears were gathering in her eyes. "Intent doesn't matter in our customs. The words create the reality. Our empathic networks register the resonance between bonded pairs automatically. My family already knows. The Kael'thir Council will know within hours." She explained the implications, and Rowan felt each one like a physical blow. They were now considered bonded partners by her entire species. Breaking the bond required both parties to formally reject each other before the council, a process so shameful that it often resulted in exile. And the political complications were worse. The Kael'thir delegation had maintained careful neutrality in tensions between Earth and the Valorian Empire, but a Kael'thir bonded to a human made that neutrality impossible. Their relationship would be seen as choosing sides. "I should reject the bond," Thessaly said quietly. "Spare you this complication. Spare both our peoples the political consequences." But she met his eyes, and Rowan saw conflict there, hope fighting with duty. "But I don't want to. I've spent months with you, watching how you approach every culture with genuine respect. How you listen, really listen, to everyone regardless of status. How you make people feel valued just by paying attention. When you said those words, I felt the resonance immediately. It's real, even if you didn't intend it. And I've been feeling it for weeks without recognizing what it meant." Rowan's mind raced through options. He could ask her to reject the bond, return to their professional relationship, avoid the political nightmare. It was the logical choice, the safe choice. But looking at Thessaly, her fear, her hope, her devastating honesty, he realized something that shouldn't have been surprising. He didn't want safe. He'd been falling for her for months without recognizing it, mistaking his feelings for simple professional admiration. "What happens if we accept it?" he asked. Thessaly explained they'd need to appear before both the Kael'thir Council and Earth's diplomatic corps to formally acknowledge the bond. The Kael'thir would accept it without question. The oath had been witnessed by their empathic network. But Earth's government would see it as a political liability. They might remove him from his position, claim he was compromised. The Valorian Empire had been pressuring neutral species to join their trade bloc, offering resources Earth desperately needed. If the Kael'thir aligned with Earth through this bond, the Valorians might retaliate. Two people's accidental connection could destabilize galactic peace. Rowan absorbed all of this, then asked the only question that mattered. Setting aside politics and consequences, do you want this bond? Thessaly's skin flushed rose-copper, affection. Yes, more than I've wanted anything. But I won't let you sacrifice your career and your planet's stability for an accidental declaration. It wasn't accidental, Rowan said, surprising himself with the certainty. I didn't know the cultural weight, but the sentiment was real. You do make me better. You have since we started working together. Maybe this bond isn't a mistake. Maybe it's just truth spoken in a language I didn't know I was using. The political fallout was immediate and brutal. The Kael'thir Council accepted the bond without question, though Thessaly's family reactions ranged from joy to concern. Earth's diplomatic corps was less graceful. Rowan faced inquiries, accusations of compromising objectivity, suggestions he'd manipulated the situation. But he stood firm, and Thessaly stood beside him, explaining Kael'thir customs with the same patience she'd once used teaching him. The turning point came when the Valorian ambassador demanded the Kael'thir denounce the bond as political manipulation. Instead, Thessaly addressed the entire Galactic Council. She explained the bond wasn't strategy, but accident, wasn't manipulation, but genuine connection. She challenged the assumption that personal relationships must be subordinated to political convenience, arguing that perhaps the galaxy needed more bridges built on authentic bonds rather than calculated alliances. Her words resonated across species lines. Other delegates shared stories of cross-species friendships that enriched their understanding. The conversation shifted from seeing their bond as threat to seeing it as model. Within months, the Kael'thir formally aligned with Earth, not from political pressure, but because the bond demonstrated humans were capable of genuine connection.